What started as a somber moment after a deadly incident instantly exploded into political warfare. In a heated House hearing, Pramila Jayapal accused Donald Trump and Kristi Noem of pushing propaganda, only for Tom McClintock to fire back with a blunt, law and order rebuttal. And once he started talking, the room went dead silent.
Of the Immigration Subcommittee.
Thank you, Ms. Ross, and thank you for your kind comments, and thank you for all of the people on this committee and beyond who have come to those shadow hearings. I've held 5 of them now. The last one had 25 members. We couldn't get everybody in because there wasn't enough time for people to speak. But I just want to go back to the problem that happens when there's a president and a Secretary of Homeland Security who put out propaganda immediately after an incident like this. Because I think this is extremely important. In a situation like this, typically you would have gathering of information. That is what local law enforcement was doing, federal agents were doing, and actually I'm no fan of Tom Homan. I think you all know that, the Trump borders are. But Tom Homan actually tried to be measured initially. He actually he gave a much more measured response, and he said he wasn't going to jump to a conclusion after watching one video or comment on an ongoing investigation. But what happened is Kristi Noem and Donald Trump immediately wanted to spin this. And the people on this committee, very good colleagues on the other side, are doing the same thing. Because when you say that we shouldn't jump to conclusions, you have to understand everybody in America is watching these videos. Everybody in America is seeing what we saw. And so when you say we shouldn't jump to conclusions, remember that the first people that jumped to conclusions were Kristi Noem and Donald Trump. And we are not going to allow that narrative to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The chairman of the Immigration Committee is now recognized, the gentleman from California.
Well, in response to my colleague, I would point out that we all have eyes. We all saw the video. And what I saw was an ICE vehicle that was attempting to leave an area that was in a near riot condition. A civilian vehicle then suddenly moved in front of it to block its departure. I then saw an ICE officer approach that vehicle and issue a lawful order to the driver to get out of the car. Instead of complying with that order, the driver backed up, pointed the car in the direction of another officer, and then shifted into drive, stepping on the gas while the officer had his hand on the door. It then accelerated in the direction of that other ICE officer at the moment that he fired into the vehicle. That's what the video shows, and we all have eyes and we all can see it. There are a lot of questions that it raises, starting with the perspective of the officer who fired at this approaching vehicle. Was the car indeed pointed directly at him when he fired? It certainly appeared that way to me from the video we've seen. I assume the officer was wearing a body camera, and we'll get a better idea of his perspective in the course of the investigation. There's the question of why the driver attempted to block the ICE vehicle as it was leaving, why the driver felt motivated to obstruct clearly uniformed federal law enforcement officers in the performance of their duties, why she willfully refused to comply with a lawful order by those officers, and why she pointed her vehicle toward another officer while hitting the gas. Now, I suspect that a great deal of her motivation was exactly from the kind of incendiary rhetoric we hear every day from our radical Democratic colleagues. It is a direct attack on the rule of law. Our ICE officers are enforcing federal law as the Congress wrote it. The Democrats here don't like that law. They object to its enforcement. And they're actively encouraging citizens to obstruct its enforcement. In a nation of laws, the answer is not to obstruct the law, but to change it. They are sitting in the very institution that writes these laws. If they believe the laws that enforce our nation's sovereignty are wrong, then they should make the case to change them. And to Ms. Ross, I'd point out that when the Democrats had the majority and our nation was suffering through the worst illegal mass migration in its history, the Immigration Subcommittee under Democratic control held not a single hearing on that crisis as it unfolded, not one. I suspect their encouragement of disobedience to the law had a large role to play in the mind of the driver and in the minds of the increasingly violent mobs that our colleagues are deliberately inciting. As Lincoln said to their predecessors, there is no grievance that is a fit object for redress by mob law. How sad these same words need to be repeated here before the House Judiciary Committee that's supposed to be dedicated to the rule of law. Now, the bill before us deals with the regulation of bail bonds and simply requires that charitable bail funds administer these funds as they advertise to their donors and be accountable for the administration of those funds according to the standards of their state insurance commissions. That seems reasonable to me, and I support the bill and yield back.
Well said, gentlemen. Yield.
Jayapal's argument is emotional and strategic. She claims Trump and Noem rushed to shape a political narrative before facts were fully established, weaponizing tragedy to score ideological points. Her warning is clear. When federal leaders speak too fast, they don't just influence public opinion, they harden it. But McClintock wasn't having it. He rejected the idea that this was propaganda at all, pointing viewers back to the video evidence itself. His response reframed the moment not as political spin, but as a breakdown of public compliance with law enforcement. In his view, the danger doesn't come from rhetoric, it comes from normalizing obstruction, defiance, and mob behavior against federal officers. This clash exposes a deeper divide. One side argues narratives create danger. The other argues disobedience does, and neither side is backing down.